Evening for the City of Lacombe Council on September 25th. It's now 5:30 and I'll call the meeting to order. Everybody had an opportunity to review the agendas. CEO Gowdy.
I'd like to add one in-camera land item for council's interest.
Very good. We'll consider that at for addition, certainly with the regular agenda. Consent agenda, anyone? Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Last call, no one want anything removed from the consent agenda then? Very good. I believe that is on your machines ready to vote for the consent agenda. Please go ahead and do so. The CEO suggested that I think we're going to give voting just an extra second. We have Councillor Hibbs joining us electronically. So that may take a short period of time, and one like this takes it's a good test. Not through yet, Assistant Post.
We might be having a bit of a communication issue with Councillor Talia.
Okay.
If I might recommend for this motion to maybe get an audio approval from Councillor Hibbs through Teams.
So that is certainly fine. And how do we go about doing that?
I believe Councillor Hibbs just has to unmute her microphone and give us a verbal yay or nay.
Very good. Hopefully she can hear us. We were communicating via text earlier. However, we have not tried the voice portion yet. So Councillor Hibbs, if you can hear us, perhaps you could just unmute your microphone and give us an indication. It's really quite hard to imagine that we were having difficulties with the electronic meeting.
Councillor Hibbs, if you're able to hear us, if you could indicate through Teams or text or verbally through Teams or through the messaging feature, that would work. Otherwise, I'll give you a call in a moment.
While we're working through that technical issue, let's consider the regular agenda. Our CEO suggested there was one in-camera item. To what group does that apply to? Land, legal, land? Very good. So a land item for consideration. Perhaps anyone else? Let's keep in mind that we do have a motion on the floor, so we won't be making any of those just yet, but we can consider items to add or adjust on the agenda. And was there any consideration for the consent agenda? Sort that as well. Very good. So let's go ahead and mark her as in favor of the last one, that we can proceed with voting.
I
And
did vote yay for Councillor Hibbs.
thank you very much. I'm assuming that that passed with flying colors, although we have no visual indication of that. And our technical team is conversing with Councillor Hibbs. This is like a Monday. Well, the votes are registered, everyone. Is there anybody that voted against the motion for the consent agenda? If not, I'm going to suggest that that was unanimously in favor, and we'll move on to the regular agenda. There's been one item added, so I would entertain a motion pertaining to that, please. Councillor Gullickson. I'll just have you use your microphone, please.
No, we're good. I'll move that we accept the agenda as amended.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? We have had indication of individual online, and we're good to go. Everybody else is fine, so please go ahead and vote. And this is so I would ask something as critical as this for a visual vote. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Any opposed? Seeing none, we'll mark that as unanimously in favor as well to keep things moving. That brings us up to our one presentation for this evening. On behalf of Lacombe Foundation, they're going to bring us our annual report. We have before us Ms. Carla Beck, the Lacombe Foundation CEO. Thank you for joining us. And certainly no stranger to this room either. The stakeholder relations advisor for the Bethany Group, Melody Stoll. Thank you both for joining us. You obviously know to use the microphone there so that people at home can hear us. The floor is yours whenever you'd like.
Thank you so much for having us. It's nice to be here with all of you. I do need the microphone. I'm kind of soft spoken. Melody probably doesn't need it, but that's okay. We'll let her talk too. So our primary purpose here tonight is just to highlight some of the items from the annual report, but certainly we'll address any questions that you might have for us that we're able to respond to as well. So just a few items that we highlighted from the annual report. As you know, the current requisition is $775,000. This is an increase from the $624,600 that was previously held for the last 10 years. So the first increase in requisition in quite a bit of time. Our inflationary pressures are much like everybody else's. They're in the areas primarily of food costs, labor costs, and carbon tax has been a big hit to us as well. Naturally, there are increases related to utilities, but we do have a fairly good contract for our utilities, so that's been managed as much as possible at this point in time. We do have some current reserves in place to share with you. The unrestricted, or rather the restricted reserves are 2.285 million, and then 1.88 million in unrestricted reserves. And those unrestricted reserves, the board has kept an eye on as well in case we have other expenses that we aren't able to predict at this point in time. And once again, I'm sure that you're aware occupancy remains a bit of an issue for us. We're below our targets in the Lacombe Lodge as well as in the Eckville Lodge. I'll just speak a little bit about Eckville first before we move on to Lacombe Lodge. The DSL portion of Eckville is full. So we're certainly seeing that people are requiring some level of health care within that site. And what we've typically seen there is that folks from the lodge required a little bit of care, and so they've moved to the DSL portion. And now we have some occupancy issues in the DSL portion. But once again, an indicator of an overall need for some care. Then our lodge in Lacombe does have occupancy issues as well, partly in due to the age of the building, the size of the rooms, and partly because of, I think, still some fear fallout from COVID as well. We know that as we move forward into fall and potential outbreaks, we might see something happen, but we're also quite confident that now these are just normal practices that we have in place in terms of influenza as well as any kind of GI outbreak, and we'll follow those practices with few restrictions like we saw during COVID. So less of a concern, but people might still be fearing those things out there. And just before I turn it over, if Melody has anything to add, one of the things that we've tried to do to help in increasing some revenue for the lodge, the Bethany Group offices, we've moved into some of those interior rooms that had no exterior window. So rather than paying an external provider money for rent for those office spaces, we thought we may as well contribute to Lacombe Foundation ourselves and use those rooms for that. And I think it's been a nice advantage for the staff in those offices as well to have a closer connection with the lodge residents and the lodge operations. Do you have anything to add?
No, not really. I just, the last few months has been a busy advocacy period for the Lacombe Foundation. As you know, we had submitted a redevelopment plan to the ministry for the Lacombe Lodge. That went through the annual business process planning process in 2019. This year, they've changed the process. So now, in addition to your business plan submission, they would like a submission of a grant application, the Affordable Housing Partnership Program. However, that Affordable Housing Partnership Program grant is limited to 1/3 of the project cost. This is a complicated project because it does not only just involve the Lacombe Lodge, it involves senior self-contained apartments at Parkview Manor, which is a different program stream that is managed by the Bethany Group, but that building is owned by the province. And after today's meeting, Ruben can probably tell you a little bit more. We seem to be at a bit of a juggernaut, recognizing 1/3 of the project cost will not be sufficient because the rents we can charge will not generate enough income to cover a mortgage payment. So those are the conversations we are having now. We're working closely with the board to try and find those advocacy touch points and keep reinforcing those with members of government. Your local MLA Johnson came and saw us today. She also has been brought up to date where we're at right now, although she's fairly new MLA, and we recognize probably her understanding of the whole overall program is still pretty green, but we're going to be here to support her as she needs questions. So we kind of gave her an introduction today, and hopefully it'll start with some questions with her and we can help support her so she understands the situation a little bit better, and we'll be able to talk intelligently about that with the members of government. I would like to actually extend a thank you to the city of Lacombe, and who, when you were invited to a meeting with the Minister Nixon this summer, that to extend it back to the Lacombe Foundation members, Chair Hoover and Member Shepherd from Lacombe County were able to attend. And we really appreciate that you continue to also advocate beside us with the ministry and include us in your advocacy. We also had an opportunity to have a Teams call with CEO Goody this summer. So I think it's nice that everyone's talking to each other. What's going on? Where can we go? And have we found a path through this? I don't think quite yet, but we'll keep working on that with the board and with you as a municipality.
Well, thank you very much, both of you. I guess I will start out by saying it's a little disconcerting when we hear the either lack of communication or the poor communication between us and the province. I don't know how to put it more plainly than to say that I thought that the minister made it crystal clear to us that there was in fact a path forward, and he would do everything in his power. He saw this as a priority for the province for seniors care, was this location. However, we did not get into the, well, while we did talk about the overall dollars, there was no talk of percentages and that kind of thing. There was some talk of Alberta Health Services monies and how we could perhaps tap into that as well. And I'm not expecting us to go through all of that this evening. However, I think it's important for citizens of Lacombe and area to appreciate that we are pursuing every avenue that we can to make this a reality. It's been needed for an awful long time, and that need is not going to go away. So we appreciate the work that you've been doing. I understand that the applications for the grants that are available currently have been made.
Not because prior to, as Melody explained, prior to this, the way to complete your application was through the business planning process. So the government has that information, including updated amounts. But because only a third of the cost is obtained through those grants, we don't have the path forward for the other 2/3 yet. So those applications have not been completed because of that. What we're doing now is asking for what are the alternatives in terms of funding, rather than, some of the funding success stories that are out there have relied largely on municipalities providing funding to those projects as well. And so we're actually asking what's another alternative when we're meeting with government now. And once again, as we spoke with department staff today, and Ruben can share this with you as well, they're answering the questions as to what the approved program is right now from a government perspective. So I think a lot of lobbying effort still needs to go forward. I was really pleased to hear that MLA Johnson is excited to promote this project. Yes, I agree with Melody. She probably needs a little greater understanding of how it works, but I think she could be a good advocate for this community as well. And I know that the board members are certainly planning to advocate further. So no is the long-winded answer to that, because we don't have the other 2/3 identified.
And the overall project cost, as
Around-
it sits currently, is what?
Around 60 million for the overall project, yeah.
So that leaves a substantial shortfall of $40 million.
Absolutely, yeah,
And this was going to be accomplished in phases.
yes,
Correct.
yeah.
And so the immediate need to initiate the first phase is how much?
And so
And as odd as it may be to request this type of information at a public forum as this, it's timely in that we will be speaking with several government officials this week in
mhm.
Alberta Munis in Edmonton, and it would be nice to have some current, and quite frankly, I hope they hear about it through this
Yeah.
medium as well. So
Say that the first phase would be a construction of a new senior self-contained apartment with 14 mixed market units. That would be a 54-unit building. The location of that would be where your current community garden is there. The price of that is between 12 and 15. I'm sorry, I had the notes today. I gave them to MLA Johnson. They're not in my file, so sorry about that. So that's phase one. That's where one sticking point is. That particular building, the rents are geared to income. So if you were to get a third of the grant, take out some sort of mortgage for the other 2/3, the people who live in that building only pay their rent based on their income. That can range from $125 to a maximum of $785. If you're only charging that much rent on 40 units, and you have to pay the water bill and the heating costs and the maintenance costs, how do you have enough money to pay a mortgage when the mortgage would be 2/3 of between 12 and $15 million? The math doesn't work.
we understand that, but there's
Those high subsidy units for your community. You're protecting your most vulnerable, your most low-income seniors in the community who live in that building.
I don't think you're going to find anybody in this
Yeah.
room that's going to argue that there's a need for this facility. But between $8 and $10 million additional funding
Yes.
would make
Yes.
phase one
That's
Yeah.
right.
a reality, and at least would get us moving in the right direction.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay, and the only reason I'm saying this, I think to expect to have a 100% go ahead of a $60 million project in hand before even moving some ground is unrealistic.
Yeah.
However, if this is a phased approach, then let's do what we can and get phase one underway.
Phase two would be the demolishing of the now vacant Parkview Manor, because those residents got to move into the new building. You take down that building as well as a portion of the lodge, just that connecting piece that connects the apartment. So there's a demolition cost for that phase. I can't remember the price of that. Your third phase is building the first 87 rooms then of the lodge. That would be where Parkview Manor is currently. Your fourth phase, demolishing the remainder of the lodge. And your fifth phase is actually more rooms for the lodge, which would be a net gain of rooms. So in your your third phase there, you're basically building enough lodge rooms to take all of the current lodge residents, move them in, then you take it down behind them, and then you can expand. And there's some flexibility in that phase 5 piece, because that's
Maybe
just for the future, that's for new need. But that up to that phase 3 is really important, because that meets who you have now, making sure they're never dehomed in the process.
Great, thank you. I guess one other important item then to ask is, has the funding portion, which you're telling us right now is a third in grants, is eligible now, has that changed recently?
Changed with the new affordable housing program that the province approved. So yes, in the previous years, there were different models for those. So for example, if we talk about the project that was paid for by the government in Innisfail, originally that was an 80%, 20% project. And because there was a change in government at the time, they made the choice to fully fund that and have the property all be provincial property. So that change was put into place that was already different from the plan at the time. Then, of course, we had a change in government and we had a new affordable housing strategy approved by the new government. And that's when this 1/3 has come to all of us.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I think we've all advocated this for how many years already, but anyways, having been in the acute care for family reasons, there's always been a significant amount of acute care beds waiting for long-term care placement. Have you used that? That's obviously at a higher level of cost of delivery of healthcare. Have you used that it's tying up our own hospital? And also, with all due respect to Blackfalds, they don't have a hospital, but I can see it that they're concerned with their own citizens. But would it not make more sense to have one bigger building, one bigger facility that is right adjacent to a hospital than going into a community that has no hospital?
So the second comment about Blackfalds, that would be a separate affordable housing project that the community of Blackfalds worked with Bethany to promote a few years ago. We're focusing primarily from the Lacombe Foundation perspective on the Lacombe Lodge replacement piece, just to address that. And I agree with you, acute care beds are being utilized for the wrong reasons. Our clients who need more of a continuing care focus, don't benefit as much from being in those beds long-term, and it's a much larger cost to the system. So collaborating with health on that is really important. And I think it's a good example that our residents in Eckville had to move into the DSL3 portion because they needed that. And typically the reasons that people leave the Lacombe Lodge are because they need a higher level of care. So when we talk about flexibility in terms of the redevelopment, I think we can look at the flexibility. If health is willing to provide some funding to this as well, then there could be some flexibility with what types of units there are in there. Maybe it's not all lodge that we're replacing that with. Maybe some of them are health beds as well.
Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Thank you for this today. It's really important to me as we go up to Edmonton. And that, I think you just answered my question about a potential another stream of funding, correct? Is what you're looking at through that. Is there any other streams of funding that you're looking at through the government at this point, other than the healthcare side?
The government is encouraging the CMHC programs, Rapid Housing Initiative and Co-Investment Fund. However, there are some challenges within those applications as well. We would have the ability to stack. We're not quite ready to get into those details with you today because we're not quite sure what the path is for that. But I know, for example, the rapid housing, you can't even apply for rapid housing until you have your contractor chosen. So that, so while someone could say, well, you could apply for rapid housing. We certainly can. We do not have a contractor chosen at this point. There's a bit of a timing challenge, I would say, with that, right? But that is a stream that's available. But again, it's to the current grant offering here from the province isn't adequate to meet the deep level of subsidy that the Seniors Lodge and Senior Self-Contained Apartments provide. So we need their dial to come a little bit this way. And then you can stack with a grant or with a CMHC. Then perhaps how many of the spaces could come to healthcare funding, and then what's left, and how does the municipalities and the housing management body cover that gap? At 1/3, that gap seems is too daunting almost to say, yeah, we can do it.
So can I follow up?
Certainly.
A little bit? So are there other communities that you are aware of that are in the same position as us as far as this change in the grants so that we can lobby as a group instead of individually? I think that would be something that would have more potential to get through to government if there's 2 or 3 communities came forward and said, hey, we can't afford this. This is going to be a real shortfall for senior housing in the province.
Yeah, our government reps will tell us that there are other housing management bodies that have applied for grants. But I will share with you that we've checked with those housing management bodies where they received the rest of their funding was from the municipalities, which of course has caused a very high requisition in those communities, far higher than I think anybody would like to see here.
Yeah, I would say Meridian Foundation is undergoing a project right now with their lodge. Meridian Foundation is Stony Plain, Spruce Grove, but the community of Stony Plain and Spruce Grove, in addition to requisition, are providing a direct contribution. That's one. And then we had a discussion. He mentioned today that I believe it was Mount View Housing has a project under the go. But by comparison, Mount View Housing, Olds area, the Olds Caroline Sundry area, their requisition is $2.2 million in order to cover mortgage payments on their properties right now. So by comparison, your current requisition is $725,000. That's of course for the whole group, not just you as an individual municipality. So, choices can be made, but I think those choices will have to have a lot of understanding and discussion with you because there's some very long-term financial commitments that would have to come.
Thank you.
Councillor Ukra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Thank you for being here. I had the pleasure of sitting on the Lacombe Foundation board for 4 years too. And first of all, I just want to say, I think you're going in the right direction though, by asking for a larger requisition. And I'm not sure why, when I was on the board, we didn't do that at a very gradual basis, because our community does need to know that seniors care, seniors housing costs. And somehow maybe we've insulated them a little bit from that reality by not increasing their acquisition. So thank you for doing that. I support that. I know you also mentioned you have some reserves. Oh, just, sorry, back to the requisition, 775 or 725?
75.
Okay, just to have that number. And then you have some reserves. The restricted reserve is primarily for the building.
That's
Is
right.
that,
Yeah.
so there is that amount of money, and then the unrestricted is for emergencies, if you will. Is that correct?
Yeah. Reserve, going through COVID, occupancy, doing this, not really knowing what's going on, but we all, with higher vacancy rates, we're also unsure of, we are still receiving some COVID funding for occupancy loss, but we've been prepared for that to be cut with very little notice, so we've had to keep some monies aside for that, to address that should it happen. And what was the other thing on the?
We've had unexpected costs
Oh.
related to damaged windows, for example, that we needed to replace at the time. We couldn't wait for government to approve costs related to that. Things, freezers, those kinds of operational items that come up but are very costly.
Yeah, the thought of, we also have an older lodge, there's items failing. This is why you want a new lodge, but you do have to keep funds aside, because if it fails, it must be replaced. We have to continue to provide a safe environment for our seniors to live there. So while maybe in the unrestricted reserve may seem a bit larger than what you might want, but there's a lot of factors into why they haven't gone and restricted any additional funds.
Certainly.
And just to follow up, then you were talking a bit about your occupancy deficit, if you will, and mentioning why in Lacombe and due to the building. But I just want to commend you for the work of your staff in the lodge. I was privileged to be part of a family celebration there, and the spirit in the building is very high, and the residents are very appreciative of it. Having said that, that is probably due to a lot of the good staff you have. And I also would encourage you and support to reward those staff appropriately.
Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So as Melanie and Carla had mentioned, we did have a Lacombe Foundation meeting today. We did have a bureaucrat from the department come talk to us, and the big takeaway was that he said there's a 1/3 cap, and that's that. So while we've had positive discussions with Minister Nixon and our MLA, I think that's our job over the next few days to talk to anyone who will listen. I had the opportunity to speak to Minister Dreeshen at the Autumn Grove Lodge grand opening in Innisfil. And I told him, hey, this is a beautiful facility. This is what we need. And these are the reasons why. And, we need to talk to people who are in cabinet, because they will be looking at a surplus. They will be looking for projects. Those decisions are made at the cabinet level. And we need to just impress upon them that 1/3 will not cut it. I'm under no illusions that municipalities will at some point have to pony up some money. But it cannot be the 2/3 that's other municipalities have done. There have been some that have done that. But I just fear that, the bulk of that will come from Lacombe County and the city of Lacombe. We can't expect Alex, Clive, Bentley, Eckville to pony up millions of dollars. They don't have it, even for us. Millions of dollars is difficult. So that was my big takeaway. We just need to continue. And at the end of the day, the bureaucrat all he can say is 1/3 is the cap. But he did offhand acknowledge that, we can, as Melanie has alluded to, push the dial, but that's up to us to get the minister and those in cabinet to push those numbers forward a little bit more, because it's just, if we can get to a better number, then as Melanie has stated, we can look at other grants with Alberta Health Services, with the federal government, and then we'll get a number. Unfortunately, the process has also changed that you can't even submit an application with identifying where that other funding comes from, because they won't even look at it now. Whereas in the past, they would look at your business plan and say, yeah, you're good. Now they're saying you got to fill out this application. fill in all the boxes. If you can't, your application won't even be considered. So it's challenging, but we need to just continue to advocate on behalf of this community
There is
for
a
them.
resolution B6 you'll be debating at convention. I hope you'll all be at the resolution session to vote in favor of the one that the Alberta municipalities lobby the government of Alberta to increase funding to housing management bodies to alleviate the affordability crisis and to provide funding for capital upkeep or replacement needed to sustain supportive living at seniors' lodges. Right? It's that balance, right? And seniors lodges are an affordable housing program for our seniors with the lowest incomes. You know, you have so many there that this program is just a lifesaver for them. They're able to live affordably and still be able to do activities and things. And we can't charge the rents. This isn't the private market. This isn't a private market plan where we say, oh, well, we got a third and rent will be $2,900 a month. Right? I think you can think of seniors you know right now in the lodge that if you said that needed to be what the rent is, that they'd be, you know, they would have no other options. Like they wouldn't have an option to live in our community anymore. And that would be a crime shame. Right?
Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just two more quick questions. Is there any, with the new federal initiatives in affordable housing, is there any funding in that stream potentially for seniors?
Yeah, some of the funding that Melody already referred to is federal funding.
Federal
So the
dollars.
Rapid Grant, for example, is a federal program. Once again, though, that we have to be shovel ready. We have to have identified all of the financing that will come forward. So we have to really have all of our numbers ready and commitment from any party in order to qualify for that.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing was in talking about the fact that you have some vacancy in the building. Are we noticing that across the province? Do you know? So is this potentially a little bit of a lifestyle change for some people where their parents are staying with them instead of going to senior lodges because of the potential for not COVID specifically, but similar types
Yes,
of events?
we do operate a number of lodges in central Alberta, and we're seeing that in other, especially rural areas. But even in some of our larger city type of communities, there have been vacancies in lodge spaces. I think part of it, we noticed so much coming out of COVID, but I think part of that was already happening because there is more home care available. They can stay in their own homes for longer. People are choosing to do that. And when they come in to the lodge now, they're coming in at the age of 90. So another reason to look at the healthcare component in those lodges to see how we could support them by having some healthcare staff available. And that's something that we've also been working on lobbying for is having some flexibility in what we're able to offer in the lodges. So could we offer a healthcare kind of hub? Maybe people are coming in to get blood pressure checks and then they're just becoming more comfortable in the lodge environment and pretty soon decide that they actually think that would be a good place for them. Or can we have a 24/7 healthcare aid at the site so that if somebody has an unexpected need during the night, then they have somebody that can work with them to help them access what they need to. So.
This is also doing a full lodge program review, and that work should be initiated really soon. We're told it's coming this fall yet. So we'll see if they can get it going. But that's really important to see what does the role of the lodge in the community, what is it, and what should the program look like? But I think that these things, they have to kind of go hand in hand right now for you. I think it's really important. You need a new space. Because if there's going to be healthcare provision, or if there's going to be an adult-based support program for seniors experiencing dementia to give the caregiver a break, the Lacombe Lodge needs to be replaced because there's no program space within the Lacombe Lodge that could accommodate that. You need the space. And a senior, maybe, weighing their options, if you're faced with a 200 square foot room as your option, when now the standard for a room, the minimum standard for a lodge room, about 350 square feet. If we have rooms that are in that 150 to 200 square feet, I mean, as lovely as the atmosphere is in the lodge, as Councillor Hoekstra alluded to, the atmosphere, that's not a lot of space, and that's really hard to make that decision to go there. So you need a new build in order to have enough program space, enough rooms. I mean, you see in Innisfail, new lodge, new building, 100% full. We have Rosalta Lodge in Camrose. While it did struggle with COVID occupancy laws, we're seeing a great rebound now. They're almost full. They've hit the 5% vacancy target that they've had. So that's good news. So more modern, flexible, attractive builds, they're getting filled up.
Okay, good. That's,
Smaller builds,
that's, to me, because I kind of felt that part of the reason was the facility itself was keeping people
Absolutely.
out. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
We should appreciate you both coming to present to us. I think that concludes the questions that we have for you. Anything you wanted to say in closing?
Once again, just thank you for the opportunity, and on behalf of the Bethany Group, we really appreciate the ability to work with Lacombe Foundation. It's great to be here in this community, and we really enjoy the staff and the facility as well, despite the fact that we know it needs replacement too. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, that will move us into the request for decision portion of our agenda. The first one, item 6.1, engineering tech. Bevins, are you going to move up here and join Director Thompson? That would be great. And let's start off with item 6.1, the City Hall renovations accommodations strategy.
Great, thanks, Mayor Creasy. As administration is developing the capital budget and operating budget for council's consideration during the budget workshops, we needed to touch base with council on an item that we had committed to bringing back to council earlier this year, and that is to do with the accommodation strategy for the upcoming City Hall renovation. The project was was paused earlier this year and to allow us to develop this strategy. And we're pleased to be able to touch base with council today and present some options. So in addition to presenting a cost range, which we're outlining here is between $10,000 and $293,000, we wanted to get council's feedback on their tolerance for remote work arrangements and the use of other city facilities, because those three things in tandem kind of dictate what the strategy looks like. And so what we've developed for council's consideration are three scenarios. Now these scenarios are, they are not meant to be like a fixed in stone type a proposal from administration. They're meant to say, there's so many ways in which an accommodation can be done, so many factors that depend on schedule and the contractor availability, that we want to just highlight what are three different scenarios that have a different tolerances for work from home arrangements, cost, and for the use of other city facilities, just to get council's feedback on them. Ultimately, we are looking for council's direction on what council wishes administration to carry forward and present in the at the budget workshop this fall. So scenario one is a minimized cost option. This is a scenario where if council's main priority was to minimize the cost of the accommodation, it could be accomplished through a scenario like scenario one. This is where 15 to 30 public-facing staff would still remain in person at various city facilities. The cost of that would be low because most staff would be that currently work at City Hall would be working either remotely, meaning as many did through COVID, or they'd be working at other city facilities. So, for example, taking over a room at the LMC or another available city facility in the interim. Now, the offsetting cost here would be, or the offsetting impact here would be that if it is a bookable facility, so if it's a bookable room at the LMC, for example, then it would be utilizing that room and other user groups couldn't use the room for a period of time. We are assuming for the purposes of these costs that it'll be about 7 months. I think that's maybe on the conservative side, but just to be clear on what our assumption is there. Scenario, I'm going to jump to scenario 3 because that's the other end. Scenario 3 prioritizes public access through in-person work arrangements. So this scenario means that City Hall staff who currently work here will remain working in person through an on-site field office or another city facility. So for example, we would bring in temporary offices, locate them nearby, have them serviced, and have the staff relocated to those offices in order to ensure that the public has in-person access to perhaps everybody at City Hall. And so this would deprioritize any kind of remote work arrangements and really ensure that there's an in-person workstation for anyone who has a workstation currently at City Hall, still has one within the city, and ideally close by at a temporary office. So this one wouldn't use city facilities as much. This one would, like I say, prioritize bringing in these offices, and those offices are like there's a cost to them, certainly, and so that's the reason for the higher cost with that option. So scenario 3 is we're estimating something in the range of $110,000 to $293,000 for that. Back to scenario 2, it's a hybrid approach. It's a balanced approach between the two. There would be some degree of additional staff working near the site or in person. Some would be still working remotely in order to accommodate the renovation, and the range there that we are anticipating in terms of cost is $60,000 to $110,000. A fourth scenario that council could consider is to assess the long-term facility needs first of the renovation. So instead of so this scenario would mean putting the larger renovation project on hold in order to do perhaps more of a refresh of the furnishings and the paint, and then look at the greater need for a City Hall facility or a major overhaul of this facility in the 10 to 15-year horizon. So this is another option that council may consider as well. But we want to stress that moving and accommodating staff, there's no zero cost option. There's a spectrum of costs and a spectrum of impact to the public, certainly to staff throughout. And so we're hoping to hear council's feedback on these various scenarios and on the project overall tonight, so that we can prepare for the upcoming budget deliberations. And if there's any questions, certainly we're happy to take them myself. And then if there's any specific questions around the details behind the costing or any of these scenarios, Technologist Bevins is here to support as well.
Thank you, Director Thompson. Councillor Gullickson, would you care to start?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. A quick question regarding facilities. Now, the start of this renovation, will that coincide with our Public Works building being finished? And is there any accommodation within that building that we could utilize?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Gullickson. And so the Public Works building is currently scheduled to be substantially complete in May-ish. And so depended on when this project were to be picked up and council's decisions this fall on that one, it could coincide. It could coincide. So is there room for all staff there? I would say no, there wouldn't be room for everybody at Public Works and the City Hall. But that is certainly available space. There's a few extra offices and things like that, and it could be utilized. And there's different ways to do that. We could delay the move of Public Works staff into the offices, and City Hall staff would be there. There could be a combination of other City Hall facilities being utilized and the Public Works building. So there's different ways to do that. So I hope that answers your question, but if not, I'm happy to clarify further.
Yeah, it kind of does. I mean, it's potentially one of the locations that could be utilized as that. Now, I understood that part of that building is not going to be finished at this time. Is that correct, Public Works? There's a portion of that? Or is the whole office space going to be finished?
The vast majority of the office space will be finished. There is a portion in the second floor of the offices that is unfinished, that could be upfitted temporarily with
Yeah, with
cubicles or things like that as well.
Okay, that was my question.
Councillor Conick?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So when I first read this report, I guess maybe I was being a little naive, but it talked about how some staff would work remotely or on other sites. And I'm thinking, well, the people in the basement would still work here, correct? But then I'm thinking, no, you're talking about this entire building, everyone either working remotely or in a different spot altogether. Is that correct? Or would there still be people here?
It's a great question. It's one that we wrestled with as well when we were developing these scenarios, and partly why there's kind of a range and not a specific answer. Because if, for example, during a very impactful phase of the renovation, say a demolition phase where it's loud, it's noisy, and it's during the day, and they say we can get in and out in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we just want to get it done, we would want to have staff. We may not want staff here, and so in that case we'd say work remotely or have some sort of other plan in place. So a lot of this depends on the specific contractor's plan. But if council were to say we orient towards scenario 1, then we know, okay, if that is the contractor's plan, we're not bringing in an ATCO trailer or something like that to move staff there, or we're not holding on to a room at the LMC or setting up say cubicles there, just waiting for this to occur. We're just sending staff home and asking them to work remotely. And so it is difficult to give you a definitive answer on what will happen. But certainly scenario 1 means wherever there is an accommodation that's required, it's going to be largely towards, for staff downstairs, mainly towards a kind of a remote work type arrangement.
Okay, I mean,
Yeah, you can just one moment, please. For IT, as much as we would like to see Mr. Bevins on screen, I'll have you bring up the administrative end so we can see speaking order and that type of thing as well. Very good. Or if you're able to minimize that and do both, that's even better, but I need to see this as well. So thank you. Councillor Conick, go ahead.
thank you. Thank you. That answers my question because I thought, well, the people in the basement could stay, right? That's not impactful, but and as I'm sitting here now, as we're discussing, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, you're right. There could be dust and noise and at certain phases. So I would see how, yeah, at some point, the whole building would have to be empty. I get that. Yeah, as for the particular scenarios, yeah, scenario 3 is not something I'm in favor of, either a 1 or a 2. Definitely not. I don't want to do a scenario 4. Like as much as honestly, we're 15 years out for sure for replacing this building. So I really think we need to do something in the interim. And even when we do replace this building, chances are it's not going to be just a city hall. It'll be a city hall / public community Abbey Center. Anyways, I digress. So I think there has to be either 1 or 2 because scenario 4, we're kidding ourselves. That's so long term. We need to do something better for our current staff here and now. Thank you.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I think somehow we have a big debate probably coming forward when the public works is completed is what are we doing with this 17 acres of land? And sometimes you see some of the options or the facial gestures of some of our administration with some of the options, but I guess could you utilize some of the office space of public works leaving and then new public works building? I'm in favor of the scenario 2, but you know, like Councillor Conick's alluded to, is it even within the 10 years? But you know, with this land, what do we do with it after the fact public works is done? Are we going to put it in the 10-year capital plan? Is this area of land for the desire of interest of what, you know, a bigger facility beyond City Hall? Or anyways, there's so many different other options, but do we leave this land sit for God knows how many years until that takes place? So sometimes I would rather have more direction into what is our future of a city hall. Or we put it into 10-year capital plan before we put how many $100,000 into an existing building? Or do we make it functional for administration and to do business now? So I don't know. I think we should still have more discussion on what is the direction of this land. Are we going to leave it sit as it is for 10, 15, 20, 25 more years? I don't know. I just, but In the meantime, I'm in favor of scenario 2. It seems the most logical to make our administration and business functional for the time being. And I don't know, is there options of utilizing some of the public works office space at the same time? I don't know. It's just, we got to make it most functional for the staff to continue to meet our city's needs.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So I guess I'll start. Maybe I'm not sure how often I'm allowed to compliment our staff and our administration, and maybe it sounds over complimentary over time, but I want to thank everyone for their professionalism. It's unbiased options in this report. I'm always grateful to see them and pleased to see them. And I don't work in this building very often. So I walk in the front door and sometimes I'll go downstairs to the conference room. And then other times I walk into council chambers. And then at the end of the meeting, I walk out. So I have to rely on everybody's needs and what they feel is best for this city hall in order to make my decision. With option 2, 100%, that's what I'm in favor of that. I think you guys know what works best for you, and you can find the proper way through for that. In regards to, I guess, option 4 is what I'm talking to in unbiased in us maybe holding off and waiting for a longer term solution. And the only reason that I'm interested in option 4 is because I know our social and gap analysis will be coming forward, and that could help us provide, like was mentioned, with combination buildings in the future and how soon we need to have those or how soon we should be looking at those. I struggle with us seeing a huge demand for a certain type of building and then us doing this and saying, oh, well, actually, this would have partnered really well with us in the future. So I guess it just comes down to our tolerance for spending in this situation. So again, thank you. And I have to trust that this is what we want and need. So thank you.
Assistant Post.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. We have Councillor Hibbs that would like to provide some input via the online access.
Very good. I'll have you set that up. In the meantime, Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. So I have a few comments and questions, but first of all was just process. So remind me, we had budgeted for renovations, and was this accommodation strategy not considered in that budget? Is that why we're looking at this first now before the actual renovation budget?
So it's a great question. The strategy around that was we had in the development of the initial budget, we had reached out or just did some research with some contractors just to make sure our budget numbers were in line. And when we originally proposed or suggested a budget to council, and we had taken some advice there, made some assumptions around the accommodation that would occur. And during the RFP process, we wanted to develop or work with the contractor to really flesh out the details of the accommodation needs, because maybe a longer term, there's just so many variables on when the staff would need to be out of the office or in the office. At the end, when we received the bids, the accommodation plan just wasn't as fleshed out as we had what we expected in order to feel comfortable with moving forward with any of the options. And so to shortly answer your question, we want to work collaboratively with the contractor to do that and develop that and then have a strong plan that is in alignment with their construction plan. We didn't see that, and so we want to take this step back and develop our own plan, and so that we can then assert our expectations on the contractor. So, for example, bringing in trailers or anything that's needed from the contractor, we could say, no, this is what we need, and you must provide that, and that has to be included in the price. And so this is a different approach than before, and that's why you're seeing it now, so that we can go into that RFP process again with a stronger expectation of what accommodation means for the city of Lacombe.
So to be clear, there's two numbers then, an accommodation strategy number for budget and then the actual renovation budget number. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So just in listening here, just expressing my opinion about, I would strongly encourage you to move Public Works staff to their building and take Councillor Ross's idea and that city staff would go into Public Works. I don't know. I just think there's something would be amiss if we took their offices for, unless I misheard. But I would rather that as much as all city, I'd like city staff to feel equal. And if the city staff got to be in the new offices, I mean, the City Hall staff got to be in the new offices first and then the Public Works staff. I don't know. I don't like that scenario, but I'm just saying that. Option 2 is definitely what I am leaning to. I have low tolerance for working remotely. I'll just say that. So thank you for offering all these different options. I appreciate, I think citizens need to know they can go see a staff member for the most part within their workspace. So yeah, thank you for this. But I guess my last question is, where's the budget then from this year's rentals? Because we had built in the numbers. So where's that money going? Because it's not spent.
CEO Gowdy?
So some has been spent, of course, on design. There is about $455,000 remaining. That would go obviously towards the project. We definitely understand and recognize the concern of what you have identified in terms of the optics of that. I think there is room for some hybrid of the hybrid because there is some unfinished space. So you wouldn't be displacing. It's not like you're occupying the offices and saying, "Oh, you guys stay over there until we're done." No, we're done. So we understand that and would avoid that scenario of seeming inequality.
Councillor Hibbs, you've been patient, waiting for an opportunity to speak. Can you hear us now?
I could always hear you. You just couldn't hear me, unfortunately. I'm assuming you can hear me now?
We certainly can. The floor is yours.
Brilliant. All right. So the question here is asking what our tolerance is. I would say my tolerance is sort of medium. So I am definitely in support of scenario 2. I do feel that this is an important project that we need to move forward to, and I have zero interest in putting it down the road into the 10-year capital plan. So I think that, yeah, given scenario 2, that allows us to move forward with the deliberations that we'll be doing for 2024. Has anybody moved the actual motion yet?
They have not.
I would go ahead then and move that council direct administration to bring forward an option under scenario 2 or the hybrid accommodation approach for the 2024 budget deliberations.
Thank you. So I appreciate staff being kind to the proposals that were made. I think we're being honest. There was no accommodation whatsoever for several items. And the kind of numbers that we're looking at are far in excess of what have been budgeted to accomplish, I think, what council had hoped for, and certainly what staff would expect. There comes a point with all renovations where the benefit outweighs or does not outweigh the cost, and this is a prime one. I just really don't think we're going to get enough bang for our buck, and I'd like to see, once again, a bit of a blend of the hybrid model, as well as some more substantive long-term planning. My expectations are that we would spend well in excess of $1 million, probably approaching 2, to renovate the front and have the public washrooms and a number of other items that were talked about. And it is just not a good investment in a building of this age, in my opinion. I think that we do have city facilities coming on stream, the most critical of which is the Public Works building, where we might be able to accommodate either some staff or perhaps some departments out of this building and put them in a full functioning office environment. I have a hard time imagining that the dollars spent in making the space usable once Public Works has moved out of the current structure to make them usable for office is going to be very well received, either by management nor by workers. But I've been wrong before. And I just think that as I said, I don't think the costs are warranted given the outcomes in this building they certainly aren't gonna be in that building. And that's being brutally honest, because they won't be. So some accommodation thereof. I'm not a tremendous fan of working from home, but I really think that we have done an awful lot of work in improving things to make us get through the initiation of the whole work at home thing through COVID and whatnot. However, just the electronic experiences this evening is a good indication why there are other difficulties with working great distances from the group. And I think that's probably one of the things that is the greatest strength of our senior administrative team is both the desire and the ability to work collaboratively together and look someone else in the eye rather than through a computer screen. So I can't help but think there isn't a way through this maze without displacing everybody in this building and perhaps lowering our expectations of what a 70-year-old building will provide us, regardless of how much money we throw at it, because it is an endless pit. And I think there's been some good choices thus far to redo that front end on what I expect it will cost and the benefit is over the line, and I don't think in our best interest. So I'm hopeful there's some other ways that we can come to accommodate people. And regardless of how it does go, please let's move towards considering a new building. As much as, yes, we may not need it today or in a year or two, but it is coming and it's going to be more money, like everything is, than any of us expect. So it's something that needs to be planned for. And if it doesn't happen for 10 or 15 years, that's fine. But we need to make a serious effort to plan for it, because it is coming and it's going to open up a whole lot of possibilities for this area as well. I think I've rambled on enough. I guess to summarize, I'm not a huge fan of the work from home, so I'd like to make whatever accommodations there's going to be opportunities to do that, and that's fine. However, on a mass scale for a good portion of the staff, I just don't think it's the most productive route to go. And I'm quite frankly not a huge fan of investing a tremendous amount of money. The $500,000. What was it? What was the number for this last go around? 573 to me was beyond the limit. And unfortunately, I think that represents a portion, perhaps a third or a quarter of what actually is going to have to happen to be able to come up with an end product that is worthwhile. So we can make changes. Whether or not they'll be better, I don't think so for that kind of dollars. Councillor Gullickson, I think you were next.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. How many staff are we talking about total?
Approximately 40 staff.
40 staff total. Okay. 45 staff here in City Hall. Close. Okay. All right. So, and then obviously one of the buildings would be for people to come, public to come in, and similar to what we have now. So you'd have a location like that. All right. So as far as the renovations go, I didn't think we were talking about the cost of the renovations tonight, right? It's part of our budget coming up. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So we won't talk about that, because I'm not in favor of that either, by the way. But I think we can probably accommodate a lot of the staff. I like scenario 2 also on a hybrid basis, and try and utilize the new space in the public workshop as best as possible. And one of the new shiny bays over there, maybe you could put cubicles in that too, because I think we have an extra one, don't we?
Might be a bit drafty,
Yeah,
but
and so I
do our
mean,
best.
Jordan, you know, I'm not in favor of the building, so it's I can say all these things. Because there was enough offices where I wanted to go. So anyway, I think a hybrid, and maybe find a spot over there, as many spots in that building as possible, because I think it will be nice, and hopefully we'll be able to utilize everything we can.
Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Christine. Yeah, as Councillor Gullickson alluded to, I look forward to seeing the budget numbers. I don't, yeah, you threw out a number of $2 million, Mayor Christine. I'd like to see, yeah, obviously I'd like to see a final number before we get too carried away, because yeah, if it's $2 million, I think that's, but I'd like to think we could do it for at least half that, if not less. So I'm hopeful. But you're right. I totally agree with you, Mayor Christie. Yeah, absolutely, we should be planning for a new facility. But I'm also under no illusions that it will not happen in 10 years. It's probably 15. Should we plan for it? Absolutely. But that's 15 years away. So I think we need to do something in this current building. Yeah, I'm in favor of the current motion. Thank you.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I think in a previous agenda item, Councillor Connick brought up with as the city increases in size of population and needs within the administration, you would obviously have a factor of the number of administration to deliver the services per population and within all of our departments. So we're going to put a $500,750,000 into a building. You only have so many square feet to work with. It doesn't matter. You can only put so many staff in length times width and 2 floors. And I still feel that I agree with Mayor Creasy that there are areas, for example, downtown. I don't think we have to say that we have to wait for 15 years to include it into a big multiplex facility that could be 30, 40, $50 million. That I personally feel is land downtown that we could enhance even more downtown of our own economic businesses by having our 40, 50, or future 60 staff in a building, new building, rather than putting $500,000 to $1 million into this building. The bottom line, you only have so many square footage. How long is this square footage of this building good for? To what population are we going to get back to the square one in 10 or 15 years where this building doesn't even serve what needs of this administration needs? I think it is a poor business decision to put $500,000 to $1 million into a building that it only has so much potential, so much capacity. I think there's several locations if our directors went and looked at their options to complete a new build. And I don't like renovations. I don't think it's disruptive. I think it's dysfunctional. And I keep repeating myself, there's only so much potential in this building when you put lipstick on it to make it work another 10 or 15 years. It's a demolish. Anyways, I'm not in favor of the renovation in the first place. I'm a firm believer of do it right, build it, don't band-aid it. So.
That's all the lights we have on here. I don't believe there was one remotely. Not that I can see anyway. And Assistant Post, could you read the motion before us once again, please?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. The motion on the floor right now is that council direct administration to bring forward an option under scenario 2 or the hybrid accommodation approach to the 2024 budget deliberations.
Thank you. I see no anybody else wanting to speak, so please go ahead and vote. And that is 6-4 and myself against. So that carries by a large margin. Thanks, everyone. Director Lapointe. Next up, we have item 6.2, the community builder application from the Lacoma District Historical Society. I understand you're heading that item.
I am.
Floor is yours.
Thank you. And good evening, Mayor Creasy and Council. This evening, administration is presenting the Lacombe and District Historical Society's Community Builder Partnership application for Council's consideration and approval. Lacombe District Historical Society is updating the Michener House Museum to accommodate a range of new programming and expanded exhibit offerings. This expansion is made possible by relocating the current administration offices to the second floor of the Flatiron Building. So it's not a physical expansion, but rather a retooling of that space. The new space will advance the Society's preservation and interpretation efforts while also enhancing the lifespan of the building. This update and several other initiatives undertaken by the Historical Society improve traffic and visitation of the downtown core, which does dovetail nicely with the city's DARP goals and tactics. This application agrees with the Community Builder Partnership policy requirements, which indicate the city's maximum contribution will not exceed 25% of the total project cost. Historical Society's application and accompanying request for funding support was reviewed by the Lacombe and District Recreation Parks and Cultural Board at their September 7th, 2023 meeting. Their motion was made and supported to recommend Council's approval of the project. Administration is returning the Historical Society's application to Council for review as the project exceeds the policy stated threshold of $10,000, which necessitates Council's approval. Administration is recommending Council approval of the Lacombe and District Historical Society's Community Builder Partnership Grant application. And with that, I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Lapointe. Questions for you, Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. This is a small but mighty group. They are constantly seem to have a project on the go, and I think that's great. But I was curious where this fit into their plan, if there is still a plan to have a whole new building at some point. Tonight, we're talking a lot about new buildings and planning and all that. I thought that the Historical Society had that idea right by the Michener House. So where does this fit with it in this project?
I don't want to speak on behalf of the society, but I do understand that that was an expensive project at the time and was going to require perhaps the use of a parking lot, a municipal parking lot. And I think they thought that a short-term step to improve the existing facility was likely in their best interest.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I have one side of me says that they came to council and expressed concerns of operational concerns. They did a presentation a month or so ago. But on the other hand, they've got several collaborative other organizations that are contributing to this project, and I'll support their passions and direction to what they contribute to the community. So I'll go ahead and make that motion. The council approves a grant of $41,852 from the Community Builder Partnership Fund to the Lacombe District Historical Society for their Reimagine the Michener House Museum project. On Twista.
Thank you, Director Lapointe. So they've got about $195,000 in this fund currently. What's the rough breakdown on where those funds originated from?
25% roughly from the federal government, I believe, and 25% from the province. There's still 25% outstanding from Lacombe County at this point. So in talking to their executive director, their sense was the county would be waiting to see what decision council here would make first. Sorry, I take that back. I'm going to roll that back one point. There was funding raised by the Historical Society themselves, and the provincial funding and the Historical Society funding themselves rolled up to the 25%.
Thank you. Councillor Dallas.
Sorry, I just, thank you, Creasy. I have a guess a question for CAO Gowdy, and I'm wondering if I can just ask it in private in regards to this before speaking. If that is allowed, I don't know.
Well, there's an interesting one. Does your electronic device not work? Yes.
I know. So I guess it's all right. I'll ask it publicly. I have a relative on the board for this organization, so I'm not sure if I should have asked to be excused before, or if there's no gain for me by voting on this.
And that's a perfectly fine thing, and quite honestly, should be asked in public, because that's a very legitimate question to ask. And I think that you'll probably get the answer from CEO Gowdy, that if you have nothing to gain it financially, quite honestly, if no one in this room was allowed to vote on things where they either had relatives or friends on boards, I don't think that any business would ever be conducted. But I will let CEO Gowdy answer that on his own.
So of course, the procedural bylaw recommends that you retain your own legal advice, and this is not legal advice. However, Mayor Creasy is correct. Within the MGA, there's an exception that states that just by being on the board of a community group, you do not have a conflict of interest. As the mayor has indicated, especially in smaller communities, it would make business really difficult if that were the case. It's if there's a direct financial benefit.
Just by bringing it up, I think people will be pleased that you did so, to know what. So you're not, it's not like you're hiding anything. It's fine.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I think the question is before us in your machines. Please go ahead and vote. And that is a margin of 6-1. That read around the mayor again in this one, for reasons which anybody can ask me later if they so choose. So that is that is majority rules, and that is 6-1. Thanks, everyone. I see Manager Mitchell making her way up to the microphone here, and she has for us item 6.3 under request for decision for bylaw 509, the offsite levy, proposed for second and possibly third reading this evening. And before you get started, I think we should acknowledge CO Gowdy. There was some communication regarding this particular bylaw via email today, originating from yourself. And I have to be honest, I was unable to read it, so I don't know what it was. What I saw the heading. Is this something that needs to be put on the floor publicly, or after Manager Mitchell has spoken, which is more appropriate?
I've asked Manager Mitchell to, it doesn't need to be read into the record or anything, but she's going to address the concern that was raised by the owner and potential developer of Bowett Ridge and Rosemont Estates in her presentation this evening.
Very good. Appreciate that. Manager Mitchell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy, and good evening, members of council. Tonight, I am presenting council with bylaw 509, the updated offsite levy bylaw for second and third reading. At the beginning of the report, I have noted that since the first reading, the city has signed an agreement with Lacombe County that resulted in the county paying a slightly higher percentage of costs for the proposed fire hall than originally assumed in our offsite levy calculations. This has resulted in a reduction of $69 per hectare for all benefiting areas, and the costs throughout the report have been updated in red to reflect this change. This bylaw update has been several years in the making, starting with an update to all the city's infrastructure master plans in 2020 and 2021. The updated master plans identified projects required to support growth in the city over the next 20 years. That, along with changes to construction costs and the city's own infrastructure, have resulted in the addition, modification, or removal of several projects to the current off-site levy bylaw that was established in 2013. Administration compiled the proposed changes and updated the cost estimates, and then met with landowners and developers in October and December of last year. Most parties generally understood the need for off-site levies and were tolerant of some rate increases. Still, they wanted to ensure that the rates were calculated equitably and raised concerns about the size of the proposed increase and the timing of the rate increase in a challenging market environment. Based on the feedback received, administration made several changes to the proposed rates. The most significant changes include removing the Southwest Water Reservoir, which was not required within the 20-year horizon. Reservoir D is in the 10-year capital plan. This is a separate reservoir. It is in the 10-year capital plan and the offsite levy bylaw, and it is expected to provide adequate capacity for growth for many years to come. The second change was splitting benefiting Area 19 into 19A and 19B to better reflect the differing stormwater needs. The third change was updating the cost estimates based on more recent market costs. Some of the originally proposed project costs were calculated during peak inflation, and some specific unit rates have receded in the following months, although a few others did increase as well. So overall, the balance was the project costs were mostly lower. 4, and this is the most significant, was changing the apportionment of costs for water reservoirs, pump houses, arterial roads, and public facility projects to an area-based calculation. Though new development may trigger these projects, there still is a benefit to the existing residents. Area calculations look at the ratio of existing development to future development that benefits from any given infrastructure project. Bylaw 509 proposes that the city pay 55% and new development pay 45% for these projects. This results in the city paying a higher share in some of the future off-site levy funded projects. Overall, these changes resulted in a significant reduction to the initially proposed off-site levy rates. Table 1 in the report outlines the current bylaw rates, the originally proposed rates that we presented to landowner and developers, and the finalized rates presented in bylaw 509. In general, the average rate per hectare was reduced from a proposed $115,000 per hectare to $84,600. This represents an overall rate increase from bylaw from the previous bylaw of 7.3%, which is significantly lower than what we originally discussed at 46%. Another major impact of these changes is they result in more equitable rates across the city, with the difference between the minimum and maximum rates decreasing from 6.4 times in bylaw in the current bylaw to 1.7 times in the proposed bylaw, or in bylaw 509. This also puts Lacombe's average rate per hectare as third lowest amongst our 10 comparators, with Olds and Stony Plain still having lower rates than us. Administration is confident that the rates included in bylaw 509 are based on sound engineering principles and are fair and balanced. At the March 20, 2023 committee meeting, Council expressed an interest in softening these changes to developers wherever possible. To achieve that, Council has included several strategies in bylaw 509. The first is the bylaw will not come into effect until January 1st, 2024. This will allow developers who have initiated projects to advance their work and execute a development agreement under the existing rates. Second, bylaw 509 includes a 3-year phase-in where developers will pay 35% of the increase in the first year, 70% in the second year, and 100% of the rate in the third and subsequent years. For benefiting areas where there is no rate increase or there is a rate reduction, which there are a few, the change will come into effect immediately. Third, to mitigate a large jump in project costs in the future due to inflation, administration has included a 2% annual inflation factor that will be applied to all rates in January 1st of each year. And finally, administration has included the option to defer off-site levy payments to construction completion. The current off-site levy bylaw, like the one that exists today, requires developers to pay 100% of the levies at the time of subdivision or execution of a development agreement. By deferring that payment to construction completion, the city can reduce carrying costs for developers without significantly increasing our risk. In the proposed bylaw 509, the fees are due before permits can be pulled for individual lots. So if a development is not complete as per the development agreement, the levy carries with the land and can still be collected from a future developer. In this scenario, the developer locks in the rate at the signing of the development agreement. So the downside is they may not pay for a couple of years. During that period, the city will not collect any interest on the levy payments and must absorb any changes due to the inflation of construction costs or any bylaw updates that could come into effect during that period. As noted in the report, some municipalities offer developers further relief by deferring a portion of the levy payment to the end of the warranty period, or FAC. Administration does not recommend this option as it does increase the risk to the city. By the end of the warranty period, a developer may have sold some or all of the lots to individuals. So if a developer cannot or will not pay, the municipality must absorb the loss of that percentage of the levy rates, or try to recuperate the cost from individual landowners who aren't expecting it. If council accepts administration's proposal to allow the deferral of off-site levies to construction completion, they may pass the second and third reading of the bylaw as presented, as it is currently included. That concludes my summary of the changes presented in bylaw 509, but I do want to comment on the issue that Mayor Creasy brought up. It is a request from an impacted landowner, and this afternoon CAO Gowdy did forward an email to those of you, so some of you may have read it. But in summary, the landowner is requesting that the city reconsider the developer's portion of the costs for the Lake Elizabeth Outlet project. This is a stormwater stabilization project. Bylaw 509 attributes 80% of the cost of the outlet to new development and 20% to the city. There are 3 benefiting areas that make up the 80%. They are Area 13, which is Ballot Ridge, Area 15A, which is Rosedale Valley, and Area 19B, which is some of Berman University lands. Because his lot is relatively small, this works out to the landowner of Area 13 paying approximately 12% of the overall cost of the project. The existing developments around Lake Elizabeth, such as Elizabeth Park, the lakes, and woodlands, do not use Lake Elizabeth as a stormwater outlet. They were intentionally designed to drain away from Lake Elizabeth. So this outlet would primarily benefit the new development around Lake Elizabeth, which requires the use of the lake for a stormwater outlet. The 20% that administration attributed to the city represents the benefits to trails used by all members of the public that would come from stabilizing the lake level. There are currently trails around a large portion of the lake, which have been created and maintained by volunteers. The fluctuating lake levels have required volunteers to reestablish the trail several times over the last decade. And just to put it into context, for the Henner's outlet, or the outlet for Henner's Pond, it's also funded under a similar model where developers are paying 80% and the city is paying 20% for similar reasoning. And then there's also a future outlet planned for Barnett Lake, which is funded at 100% to new development, because in that area around Lake Barnett, the city does not own or maintain any trails. And it's all future development around that particular lake. So I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have at this time.
Appreciate that, Manager Mitchell. The one thing I'd like to clarify then, as far as offsite levies go, in a closer proximity of our trading area, do I understand that we are, with these proposed rates, we remain the lowest per hectare? And it was only when we extended it out to, was it Olds and Nisku or Leduc or somewhere, that they were perhaps higher?
So of our, we have 11 registered comparators and an adopted, is it an administrative directive, CAO Gowdy? 11, yes. We have 11 adopted comparators. And so Olds and Stony Plain are 2 of our adopted comparators. And so we are higher than them. Wetaskiwin was excluded, so that's why this report says 10, because they haven't updated their offsite levies since 2005, and even the offsite levies that they had were only related, I believe, to sanitary sewer. They don't have anything for roads or water, so they just weren't generally comparable.
So for a 50-mile radius and for a reasonable trading distance, we are the lowest.
Our comparator list may not include smaller municipalities. Like I don't believe Pinoca is in our list of comparators, just because of the size of the community is much smaller. So I can't state that equivocally, but for municipality our size, we are the lowest in Central Alberta, or third lowest in Central Alberta.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I will trust that this has been discussed and brought back to council before and done our due diligence. So I'm going to move that council give second reading to bylaw 509 as amended.
Thank you. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Just to go back to the communication that we received today, this person indicated in that email, I did not just reread it, but I should have maybe, that he just became aware of this on September 5th. And I guess I wouldn't mind if you reiterated the consultation process that this bylaw has gone through. And at some point, there would have been good messaging done around this bylaw.
Certainly. Thank you, Councillor Hoekstra. We did complete an extensive consultation process in October through December of last year, where we invited all impacted landowners and developers to book a meeting to come in and sit with the city. We sent out letters that kind of explained what the process was and what the changes were. As part of our commitment, since there were significant changes, even though they were significant lowering of the rates, we did send out an updated letter to all of the impacted landowners at the beginning of September, advising them of the change in the offsite levy bylaw rates, or the proposed offsite levy bylaw rates, that a lot of them were made based on some of the comments or discussions that we'd had with them. So that's the correspondence he was referring to. It was not one that was mandated by any sort of legislation, but one that we felt with the large amount of changes was still a fair thing to do.
Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. This bylaw update, I think, is impressive in the fact that we received so much consultation response and updated accordingly. And with that, we are still extremely competitive in these rates while also making sure the city is financially stable and responsible going forward. So yeah, thank you. I look forward to voting on it.
And with the one individual developer that was brought up today, is it safe to say that's the highest percentage that has been allocated towards, was it 80% and 20% for the city?
So there is other stormwater projects that are 100% allocated to developers and 0% towards the city. This one was 80%, but that's not 80% to that specific developer. That's 80% to all benefiting area developers. His specific share is closer to 12% of the entire project. So he's not, and that's due to the size of his land. Right. The other developments around the lake, such as the Berman University lands or Rosedale Valley, have a larger portion of area that benefits from this project, and so therefore they're going to pay a larger proportion of that 80%.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. So down the road, if an individual developer felt that they were being mistreated by any of these numbers here, what options do they have to bring that either to administration or before council for consideration? Just to play devil's advocate, if in fact there was some that thought they were, we've all heard the reasons before, how I didn't know about it and all the rest of it, but I'm just curious, is there any or no?
This particular bylaw does not outline a specific mediation type schedule. I'm going to look to Director Thompson and see if he'd care to provide additional commentary, but of course we'd bring any request from a developer to council for consideration.
So thank you, Mayor Creasy and Manager Mitchell. Council's bylaws generally, they're adopted through 3 readings of council, and so they are fixed. And so the administration is obligated to collect the fees identified in that bylaw, and council is also obligated to allow that as long as that bylaw is in force and in effect, that those are the fees for those areas that will be collected at the time of development. And so if a developer wished to express views toward that, then certainly there's the normal mechanisms that they can reach out to council and do so. There is not an appeal mechanism in the MGA that the MGA highlights, nor is there an appeal mechanism through the bylaw directly to dispute those rates. The requirement of the MGA is that the municipality consults in good faith with the development community and landowners who are affected leading up to the development of this bylaw. And the work that we have done and the consultation that we have done with developers, we are saying that we have done that. And so it would be at this point up to council to agree that we have done that in good faith and pass the bylaw, or to direct administration to take action that it sees fit to re-engage the development community prior to passing second and third reading tonight.
I appreciate that explanation. I put out some fires before they start. No one likes paying higher fees. Developers are no different, and I get that. However, I wanted it to be known that that consultation was done and taken into consideration, and I do think this is a fair adjustment, certainly to the original proposal. I want it to be known that this is still the probably one of the most attractive areas to develop as far as offsite levies are concerned. But I have no doubt that we will hear about it in the future. So we have second reading before us. Anything else before we? Seeing none, please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimously in favor. Thank you. I guess I would just ask, perhaps there is someone that's interested in doing the third reading, or do we see benefit in postponing that to an alternate meeting? I have a hard time imagining that it would be substantially different vote. However, if we want to be truly open and transparent, giving one more opportunity for input from those affected parties, certainly may be a consideration. Councillor Dallas?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I believe by acknowledging concerns and considering them tonight, we have done that. So I am prepared to make the motion that council give third reading to bylaw 509 as amended.
Thank you. Anyone else?
If I may, Mayor Creasy, I was made aware this afternoon that some of the mailings of these updated letters were delayed in going out in the post. I assumed that they all went out on the date on the letter, and a few of them were deferred. So the proponent today said he just got the letter on Sunday. That might be a consideration to defer a third reading. As much as I would love not to come back and present it a third time, you may consider to delay it in case there are any further comments. It's up to you, though.
No, I appreciate the honesty, bringing that forward. That creates some interesting challenges with the motion being made. However, I'm sure we can work through those too. Director Thompson?
Thanks, and certainly just some additional context regarding the consultation process. And earlier this year, we presented a what we heard report to council that further outlined the consultations that we have done with the development community and landowners. And while this latest letter there's some issue with Canada Post recently, that is certainly not the only communication we've had with the development community. It's been happening for some time with landowners, with the developers, specific invitations to come in and speak with us so we can talk about the changes. And so so just want to make sure that that's in context as well as council's considering how they want to proceed with the third reading tonight.
Thank you. So not knowing what's on everybody's mind as far as the information that was brought forward by Manager Mitchell, I would ask the mover if it is of sufficient consequence for him to reconsider first off.
So I guess on my personal opinion, I believe that adequate consultation has happened in the past, but if there is interest by other council members, then certainly, but from where I stand, I think I'm good to move forward with my motion.
Thank you. Fair enough. I do agree with there has, however, do we want to remove any doubt and give an opportunity for an additional, what are we at, a couple of weeks or whatever? I don't think that there's any harm in leaving it till the next one. And I don't think we need to really reiterate the entire bylaw for the third reading at that time, but given that this is not a particularly well-received item for most of the development community, myself, I would prefer to err on the side of caution, but I would like to hear from the rest of council as well. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Obviously, if we vote against it, the bylaws defeated.
That is the difficulty, yes.
Right, correct. So we would have no real option if we didn't.
I think there's always some options.
But I mean, as far as the vote goes, right now, currently, if we vote for this, it goes through. If we vote against it, wanting to wait, there is no waiting.
That's
This,
correct.
this would defeat the whole thing, right?
You could table a motion for one meeting.
Correct, but you.
Right, but
In the voting, you
But
are correct,
yes.
Councillor
Yeah,
Gullickson,
okay.
yes.
just
that-
wanted that to be clear,
Yes.
because that was what I thought. So, okay.
And did someone else, Councillor Ross, did you have your same thing?
My apologies. Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I was just wanting the, I guess, reassurance of the consequences.
Oh, and fair question. System post?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. We do have Councillor Hibbs who wishes to speak to this matter as well right now.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hibbs, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, the motion has been made. It's on the floor. I'm not hearing a motion and I don't support a motion to postpone. So I would like to have the mayor call the question, please.
Thank you. Councillor Conick.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I'm fine with it doing third reading today. Yeah, we might get a little more feedback, but is it going to change significantly the outcome? I mean, as you have mentioned, this is a very good, and kudos to administration to coming up with an offsite levy bylaw that took into consideration the concerns that we heard and allowed for it over phasing over 3 years and allowed for a different number and I like it. It's not perfect. Like many things we do, there's many people who don't like what we do and aren't happy with the outcome, but I don't see it changing much if we leave for 2 more weeks. Thank you.
So I couldn't agree more. It's strictly a perception thing. There's no two ways about it. But if there's no adjustment to the motion before us, and I see no more input, then I will call the question. Please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimous in favor. Thanks, everyone. I would like to think by the mere fact that we discussed the timing and any communication issues that there could have been, but I think that will go an awful long ways in calming some of the objections that I expect we will hear. So the next item before us is notices of motion, item 7.1. Councillor Hibbs, if you're still online, if I get you to go ahead and read your motion first off, please.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I am delivering a notice of motion that I wish to debate at the next meeting. A motion that reads that council direct administration to develop for council's consideration amendments to the land use bylaw, community standards bylaw, or other bylaws that may be appropriate to regulate and limit the use of residential properties for material storage or transfer.
Thank you. And Councillor Conick.
Motion to go in camera.
Very good. We will do that here shortly. I think before we do that, I'll just read off the next meetings for anybody watching online. Upcoming ones are the regular council meeting on Tuesday, October the 10th at 5:30 p.m. here. And then our committee of the whole meeting, same time and place on October 16th. And then at the end of October, on the 23rd is our organizational meeting, immediately followed by another regular council meeting. And that will start at 5:30 p.m. as well. We have a motion before us to move in camera. It is 7:20. Please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimously in favor. So we're now in camera.